got our 2011 Silverado 3500 LTZ Duramax, obviously. 4-wheel drive. It's a really good truck. We were surprised at how much we ended up liking it because we grew up in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And back then, other than maybe certain Italian car brands, there was pretty much nothing worse than a GM in terms of quality. Like, absolutely nothing worse. You know, this was the age of the Chevette and the Citation. And what was that diesel? They had like the 6.2 maybe? There was an Oldsmobile diesel that was like a converted gasoline engine. Absolute disaster. The Cadillac Cimarron, you know, cars like that. And so we thought we would never own a GM product in our entire lives after growing up in the 70s and 80s and seeing the kind of junk they put out back then. But, you know, and that may or may not still be true in terms of cars. You know, we had a Chevy Volt briefly a couple years ago because we thought it might be a neat idea, you know. Runs on electricity for 50 miles and then switches on the gas engine. You know, so theoretically you might go 6 months without having to top off your gas tank because you're driving on nothing but electricity. And compared to the alternatives, you know, compared to like a Prius or something, we were not going to get a Prius, obviously. And, you know, an electric car, obviously the Achilles heel there is you got to stop and charge it every couple hours. And, you know, after driving cross country in a Tesla and stopping every 2 hours to charge for 30 or 40 minutes, no, that's not the ideal answer. So we thought maybe the Volt would be. But to be honest, even that was a model year 2016, and you know, even then there were a lot of quality issues with the interior, you know, stuff that just looked cheap and felt tacky. Little stuff was already starting to go bad. You know, we had it into the dealer probably 3 times in a couple of months of owning it. And this is a car, this is a 2016. It had been, you know, by that point, you know, 2 or 3 years into its life, you would have thought all the little stuff would have been sorted out, but no, there was all kinds of little shit going wrong with it, little stuff. And on top of that, it just wasn't a fun car to drive, you know? It was tiny, you could barely fit into it. Our 10-year-old kids couldn't even fit in the back seat hardly. You couldn't even put any luggage in the trunk or the hatch area, you know? Terrible traction in the snow. It was a front-wheel drive car, and it's the worst handling front-wheel drive car we've ever driven in the snow. So we got rid of that car, made them take it back, and then wound up with something else. But we got this Duramax because, I mean, a number of reasons. The first is because, you know, we tow a lot of heavy cargo, meaning, you know, 15,000-pound trailers, 18,000 pound trailers. Not super heavy, but, you know, heavy for a pickup truck. We've got a Ram 3500 2-wheel drive long bed with the Cummins diesel 5.9. Great engine, and it's an excellent truck. And that thing is pushing 20 years old. It's a 2003, so it's 18 years old. It's got 400,000 miles. It just runs like a train. It runs like a freight train. But here's the thing, you know, even a Ram from that era, from 18 years ago, they were not set up to carry or haul a trailer in the 15,000 pound range. You know, the max trailer I think on that was 13,000 for a 3,500 heavy duty pickup truck. And so there were things we couldn't do with it. You know, you couldn't go over the Rocky Mountains comfortably. We took an 8,000 pound trailer over the Rockies. It was not happy doing that. Going through I-70 through like Colorado and Utah Utah. I was not happy doing that. And there's really two reasons. The first is that in terms of power and the transmission, the engine and transmission, the engine's great, but that engine was not even a heavy duty 5.9. It made 235, 240 horsepower. And 400 some pounds of torque. That is not enough to get an 8 or 10,000 pound trailer up over the Rocky Mountains comfortably. And the automatic transmission, the 47RE, it's okay. We've had to rebuild it once, in the truck's 400,000 miles. So that's about right. About every 250,000 miles. That's when that transmission dies. It's got a lockup torque converter, and it just has some trouble going 65 or 70 miles an hour up a very, very steep grade on the interstate towing a trailer. It's constantly wanting to downshift and then over rev the engine, or upshift and then kill the power. And it doesn't have enough of a ratio spread to really optimize the engine's power band. And then coming down a steep hill, the problem you have with that engine and transmission is that it doesn't have that good of a tow haul mode, and there's no engine brake, or exhaust brake I should say. So you end up cooking the brakes coming down a steep grade, even when you're in the right gear. And so, great truck, but not ideal for towing heavier trailers like this one. This is a 48-foot all aluminum. It's made by a company called Axis from Oklahoma, just outside Oklahoma City. It's super lightweight until you fill it up with cargo. And at the weights we were starting to pull, the Dodge stopped being happy with it. So it was a question of what we're going to get next. The Dodge had 2-wheel drive. We did not like the 4-wheel drive Dodge we had. We got rid of it because the steering was terrible. You'd be doing this for hours and hours on the highway. It could not go straight. And our mechanic, we took it to a bunch of places. Nobody could get it to actually want to go straight down the highway. A 4-wheel drive Dodge with a straight axle. And so we had the idea of, well, let's get a truck with an independent front end. Because those actually tend to steer better. And if you're going to get a heavy duty truck, that really leaves one option, and that's the Chevy or GMC. Same thing. And so we started looking into the model years and the different engines and transmissions and that type of thing. And everybody who owns a Duramax, has an opinion about their Duramax. A lot of people say the LBZ is the last good Duramax that was ever made. And that was the 2006 and then early 2007. And the reason why they say that is because, well, it doesn't have a DEF system. And it doesn't have a DPF, otherwise known as a soot filter. And because of those two reasons, it's going to make a ton more power and get a ton more gas mileage, or better gas mileage. And it's got a couple of other things that make it a good engine. And that engine has around, 350 horsepower, maybe 650 pound-feet of torque, give or take. And so that would have been a step up from our Dodge. That would have been about a 50% bump in power. And we test drove a couple. And, they were okay. We didn't fall in love with them. At this point, it was, when we were seriously looking for this truck, it was like 14, 15 years after the LBZs stopped being made. And they were kind of starting to get some age. And again, you're talking about a GM product, and we had a lot of concerns about the quality of a GM product. And we didn't really find an LBZ truck that was all that appealing to us. Again, we test drove a number of them. So we started looking at the newer ones. We were not going to get a 2 or 3 year old 3500 series pickup truck because the prices on these are preposterous, and even a 3-year-old truck is going to cost you an insane amount of money compared to the value it provides. And so we started looking at the 2011 to 2014 Duramax, which is called the LML series engine. It is a 397 horsepower, 765 pound-feet of torque engine, if we remember right. And that is all the power we need. You know, the newer ones are up like 445 horsepower, I think, 900 some pounds of torque. The Dodge, I think, is 1,000 pounds of torque now. You don't really need that much power and torque, you know. I mean, you can always use it, but there's no need to pay 80 or 90,000 bucks for a brand new truck with that much power. You just don't need it. For anything that most people need to do, 397 horsepower and 765 pound-feet of torque is easily all you need. So we just started looking, and you know, last summer, which was 2020 during the pandemic, there has been a run on pickup trucks, and the price, I don't know what the hell happened, but the price has been getting pushed up higher and higher and higher. And you know, so there was a little bit of a scarcity condition. We were all over the country looking at these trucks, and we eventually found one in just outside St. Louis, about an hour outside St. Louis. It's an LBZ. Not LBZ, LTZ in terms of the trim level. You know, so it's got a, you know, a pretty nice interior. Not that we cared too much about that kind of thing, but it was clean. It hadn't been abused. The seats were in good shape, black leather seats. Everything worked. The truck itself was spotless, no rust, no accidents. You know, the underside wasn't caked full of mud and dirt and hadn't been torn up by rocks and gravel and stuff like that. It had spent its whole life on the interstate, pulling boats to a boat dealer near Lake of the Ozarks. Didn't have a gooseneck hitch, and you know, to be honest, if you're buying a used truck, if you see a gooseneck hitch, that's kind of an indicator that it's been put to a lot of heavy use, and it's going to make you want to be a little more cautious with it. You know, check the engine and transmission a little more carefully, brakes, suspension, ball joints, all that stuff. But it was, I mean, for a truck that was that old, it was in exceptionally good condition. Had the engine checked in every way possible, transmission checked out, everything worked. So we picked it up, and we've actually been extremely happy with it. Even though, you know, the problem with any diesel made after the middle of 2007 is that it's got all that stuff on it. It's got EGR, and some diesels had EGR before then. You know, the LBZ, everybody's favorite Duramax, has EGR. And so you got the EGR problems. You know, the cooler goes bad. You know, all that stuff. The valve goes bad. And so it's got EGR. It's got a DEF system. I don't know if 2011 was the first year for the DEF system. It might have been. And then it's got the DPF, obviously. And so you have to deal with it. And, you know, unfortunately, unless you want to get a diesel from 2006 or before, you're going to deal with that stuff. We've got a diesel from the year 2003. It's great. It doesn't have any of that crap. But it's got its limitations. So here's what you get with a diesel made after 2006. You get a factory exhaust brake that works. That works great in conjunction with the ABS system. get an exhaust brake built into the engine, and you activate it right here. And the engine and the transmission work together with the exhaust brake and downshifting to control the truck very, very, very well. You know, whether you're just pulling off the interstate or whether you're going down a very steep grade that's 15 miles long and it's, you know, a 6% grade that would cook the brakes in an older truck that doesn't have the exhaust brake built into it. And so it's got a lot of features. You know, the DEF system, to be honest, you know, it's given us some trouble. We've had it into the dealer a couple times for, you know, the NOx sensor, the nitrogen oxide sensor. You know, we've had it in the dealer for the, you know, they had to do a manual regen on it, on the DPF. And actually the LML is an interesting engine in that regard. It's got a separate fuel injector. It's got a 9th fuel injector that injects fuel directly into the exhaust, specifically to run to burn off all the soot in the DPF, the soot filter. And so it's, you know, the first time manufacturers had to deal with all the new diesel emission requirements, it was 07 and 08 time frame, and they had a lot of trouble because it was their first go at it. But this truck was made 4 years after that, you know, that first attempt at dealing with the new emissions regulations. And so, you know, it does a good job. It does as decent a job as it can in terms of dealing with all that. You know, again, everyone says don't get a newer truck with all that crap on it, because it kills the MPGs and it kills the power. Well, this thing makes 397 horsepower, so how much more do you really need? And in terms of MPGs, to be honest, you know, we get between 9 and 11 miles to the gallon, towing a 48-foot trailer with a combined weight of 25,800 pounds between the truck and the trailer. So that's better than our Ford F-150 hybrid gets, towing a 12-foot trailer. You know. So again, we can't complain. The other thing that we'd say about this truck, the 2011, is that this was the first year they put a new heavier duty frame, new heavier duty suspension. You know, the body didn't change that much from when it was introduced in 2007.5. You know, the body and the interior hadn't changed in about 4 years after this generation was introduced. But again, in 2011, you got the brand new engine, which was the LML. You got the brand new frame, a lot stronger, and you can feel it. It does not have any trouble handling a heavy trailer in the least. You got new suspension, you know, built to handle this type of load. And so in that time frame, in the year 2011, the Duramax, the Chevy, was a better truck than the Ford or the Dodge. And other people will say what they want, but that's basically the fact. And the thing we liked almost more than anything is the fact that you can actually control the truck. You know, the steering, it goes straight. You don't have to fight with the wheel every minute you're on the highway to keep it going in the right direction. There's no drama. It's just a well-controlled truck. And, you know, when you're driving as much as we do, we do easily 50,000 miles. You don't want a truck that's causing drama in your life, giving you gray hair and wrinkles at an early age. So anyway, there it is. You know, there's a lot you consider when you are looking for a truck to tow a big or heavy trailer. And, you know, we looked at a lot of options. And, you know, for our money, this is the best choice. And if you're going to be honest, you know, there's not much that's changed since this truck came out, since 2011, that would make us want a newer one. You know, the features on the newer ones that have the engine called the L5P, you know, again, it's bigger, more powerful, stronger. It doesn't have the, as far as we know, it doesn't have the CP4 fuel pump issues. It may or may not, let's put it like that, that the LML has. You know, everybody on the Duramax forums and on the Facebook and all the groups talks about the CP4. That's the high pressure fuel pump that the LML has. And there are failures in your CP4, which was built to run on European fuel, which had a lot better lubrication properties than American fuel. Yes, a substantial number of them have failed, and when the CP4 goes out, it releases metal particles into your high pressure fuel lines, into your injectors, into your return lines, and so you're going to have to replace the CP4, all of your high pressure lines, the rail, your injectors, the return lines, and pretty much your entire fuel system when that CP4 dies. And so, you know, a lot of people get what's called a CP3 upgrade, upgrading to an older pump at the cost of around $5,000 or a couple $1,000s, and that will save you the 5% chance that your CP4 is going to die and cost you $10,000. To us, you know, we've talked to enough people, you know, who've got 500,000 mile LML Duramaxes, and you know, if you're that scared or concerned, then sure, get the CP3 upgrade. Or you could just take the 95% chance that you're not going to have trouble. Either way. You see the engine light comes on, and that is something we've had checked a number of times, and it relates to NOx sensors. There's called an upstream and a downstream NOx sensor in the exhaust system, and that is to tell the DEF system how much DEF it needs to be using to help clean up the NOx, the nitrogen oxide emissions. And we've had it looked at a number of times, and we've had one of the sensors replaced, and the light keeps coming on, and you know, short of rewiring the entire DEF system and both NOx sensors, you know, the light's not going to go off, and so we're not concerned about it. It's not going to cause any trouble. The DEF system still works. We've had the low DEF warning come on and had to top it off, and so it just, you know, it all works, and we're not going to pay thousands of bucks to get the light to come off by rewiring the entire DEF system and getting both those sensors to read properly. Nothing else to say. It's just a good, solid, dependable truck. You know, it doesn't have the character and that typical noise of a Cummins. The power delivery is solid. You know, you don't have to wait for the turbos to spool up. The turbo, I should say, because it's actually a pretty small turbo that they put on this engine. And I think the reason why they put such a small turbo on was so that when they clamp down the vanes, when you actuate the exhaust brake, so that it could actually build up a lot of back pressure and generate engine braking. And in that respect, it works great. It's not like that sexy of a truck. It's not that exciting. You know, it doesn't have the attitude of a Ram. The interior is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But around that time frame, 2012 or 2013 maybe, the interiors on the Ram started getting really, really nice, and they pretty much set the standard for the interior on a heavy-duty pickup truck. Yeah, there's a lot of glare from the sun coming on. Nothing you can do. But you know, again, this thing drives as well as a Suburban. It is a comfortable truck to drive, and there's just no drama. You know, you're not fighting the steering wheel. You can actually hear the person you're talking to in the other seat because the engine isn't that loud. There's not a ton of wind noise. you know, everything just works. And, you know, again, when you're towing a big trailer, a heavy trailer, you don't need drama. And this truck provides a no drama driving experience. So there you go. All right, thanks everyone. Great talking with you.